Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Light 'em Up Lounge. Welcome back for a very special tasting session. And who better to explore the wonders and the whole world of Mexican tobacco with than the man, the myth, the legend himself, the one and only Alejandro Turrent, the first family of Mexican tobacco and cigars, the Turrent family. And Alejandro, it gives me great pleasure and pride to have you here with us today to do this very special tasting of tobaccos with me. I have a whole lineup here. Five little fumos, five different tobaccos grown in Mexico by the Turrent family. And Alejandro will walk me through the whole tasting process, and hopefully, I can relay and share the experience with you. And Alejandro is gonna um, share with us his knowledge, his experience, his expertise about Mexican tobaccos, and we'll have a very special tasting session, I'm sure. So, without further ado, welcome one and all. Thanks for joining us today. For those of you who are tuning in via YouTube live stream, please make yourselves heard in the comments. I would love to have your thoughts here in the show as well. And for you guys at the lounge, you know the spiel. Chime in, make yourselves heard, and let's get right into it. Alejandro Turrent, welcome back to the
Right
Light
now,
'em Up
thank you.
Lounge.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much for the invitation. It will be wonderful to have this experience with you about the different tobaccos that we have in Mexico.
Absolutely. As I said, I have five different tobaccos here, kindly provided from your good self, of course. And just so we let everybody know what we're about to explore, we have a Capa Negro San Andres. We do have Quemado. We have a Habano 2000 binder, if I'm not mistaken,
Mhm.
Criollo 98, fourth priming, and we do have a Habano wrapper, which we'll get to at the very end. But the first one, Alejandro said I should get right to the Negro San Andres, which for most people is probably the Mexican tobacco they know the most of or hear the most of. So whilst I get going here on the first tobacco sample, Alejandro, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you chose these tobaccos in particular, what I should be expecting from them, and at the same time, whilst we're at it, I would love to, of course, take a deep dive with you into some of the historical references and the evolution of Mexican tobacco throughout the decades and centuries. And most importantly, of course, the unique characteristics on an olfactory and gustatory level and how these tobaccos contribute to blends.
Sure. Well, the first thing that we all need to know is that there are different types of tobaccos that we produce in San Andres Valley. No? When people refer to tobacco from San Andres or tobacco from Mexico, basically, or most of the time, they are referring to the Negro San Andres because it's the one that is more known, and is the one that has been produced since the early 1800s in the area, is the one that is endemic from San Andres. So that's the reason, and it's obvious, no, that people think that when they hear about tobacco from Mexico, they usually refer to that type of tobacco, the Negro San Andres. The Negro San Andres is the tobacco where the San Andres Maduro wrapper comes from. So that's very important to mention, no, also. So that's a very unique tobacco in terms of how we produce it. For example, we don't do primings with it. We only do one cut after X amount of days. We cut it, and it's the process is it's a little bit different than I would say that most of the tobaccos. Anyway, so
When
then
you say you cut it, Alejandro, do you mean stalk cut, as you
we
would see in the River Valley with
okay.
broadleaf?
Well, we don't do primings like first, second, etc. We do one priming, and that's it. No, at the end. In the old days, we used to stock cut. Yes, that tobacco, because that was the tradition. But things have changed a lot with the people, with the amount of tobacco, etc. Many things have made us to not to do stock cut anymore and to do primings. So that's the way we do it. But that's after 75 days when we do one priming, and that's it. So that's different from others. And then we have tobaccos from the Cuban seed family. We produce at the moment 3 types of Cuban seed tobaccos in San Andres. One is the Habano 2000, the other one is Habano Criollo, and the other one is a hybrid, which we call it Habano San Andres, no? That hybrid is what we use as wrapper. It's a marvelous wrapper. It's got a great shine, great color, great elasticity, great size. And that's the reason why, and of course, the most important, great taste. And that's actually the reason why we produce it, because it's got all, we were able to achieve to have all what I mentioned in this tobacco. And we have the Habano 2000, which in the old days, when somebody developed this seed, it was used for wrapper. We produced it also in San Andres for that purpose, but we ended up using it for everything, for filler, binder, and wrapper. In other places, the idea where they grew it, where they produced it, they tried to use it. I believe Nicaragua, basically, they tried to use it for wrapper, but it had some burning issues. So basically, they stopped it. Now, we in San Andres, we stopped producing it because back then we were not using that much Cuban seed in our blends. So we produced it 1 or 2 years and then we stopped. That was more than 20 years ago. Then we stopped, and about 10 years ago, we started to produce it again, the Habana 2000. And now we produce it continuously every year because in my opinion, it's a great tobacco. That's it, Habano 2000, grown in San Andres for binder and filler. It's great. I really love it. It's one of my favorites. That's also why I sent it to you. And well, you'll see. And then we have the Criollo. The Criollo has a more similar flavor to the original Cuban seed from Cuba. This is my opinion. It's got some sweetness, at the same time, a little bit sourness, very enjoyable. And it's what I would say, if I have to compare it to other tobaccos, similar to tobacco from Cuba, very, very similar, and similar to the tobacco from, for example, from Jalapa, Nicaragua. This is my opinion. Some other people might think differently, but this is what I think. So in total, we have 3 Cuban seed tobaccos, Habana 2000, Habano Criollo, and Habano San Andres. And we have the Negro San Andres.
Let's briefly talk about the Negro San Andres, which is the one that I'm enjoying here first. Genetically or historically speaking, what do you know which genetic family this particular varietal came from? Because I guess most people now would consider it an autochthonous seed varietal from Mexico, and the proprietary criollo, as they sometimes say. And obviously, after 8, 9, 10 years, however many it might be, a seed grown in a different country of origin or in a different terroir will eventually evolve into its own seed or its own proprietary tobacco. But historically, with the Negro San Andres, can you sort of date back or reach back in history as to where that seed originally came from? Or was it always indigenous to Mexico?
No, well, honestly, that has remained as a mystery, no? But we are very close with the greatest scientist from Cuba. His name is Eumelio Espino, and he says that there is some tobacco in certain area in Cuba that is the same as the Negro San Andres. So how it got to San Andres, honestly, we don't know exactly, no? We know that people started to produce it, to plant it 1850, and that's basically it, no? We also know that it might have come from different areas from Mexico. The Yucatan Peninsula is also known as where people found the first the first samples of tobacco, let's say, tobacco plants. So it's really a mystery, if it came from Cuba, if it came from the Yucatan Peninsula.
I sometimes heard that people thought that Sumatra seed also made its way back to Mexico. Is there any evidence to that, or do you have any knowledge or experience with that?
No, actually, it's the first time I hear that. Probably I don't remember, but no, in our case, the Sumatra came through some Dutch people that were trying to establish, they were almost established in San Andres, but there was an issue going on and abroad in their country, and also I'm not sure if in Indonesia back then. I'm talking about the 60s, and they left the seat also. So that's how we started. And we had no idea back then. You have to understand that San Andres was producing only Negro San Andres, and that's it. So people didn't have any idea about other kind of tobacco at all. No, and back then there was not so much communication with other places. So really, there was no way to know what kind of tobacco was this or the other one. And so anyway, so we started to plant this tobacco, the Sumatra, just as an experiment. And we had one time somebody from, I believe, from Tampa, Florida, who used to have a, not sure exactly, or from Europe, that had a factory, of course, and he saw this tobacco, the Sumatra, that we had produced, but it was a very, very small quantity. He asked for it. I mean, he asked about it, and we said, well, it's a tobacco called Sumatra that, we told him this, but not me, my grandfather, not told him the story about it. And he said, how much do you have? And my grandfather said, nothing, no problem. We had, I don't know, 100 kilos or something like that, And he said, okay, I will buy it from you. How much do you want for it? And I remember, my father said, if we were, just as an example, if we were selling the kilo of the negro at $1, my grandfather asked for $4, right? Just like that. And he said, okay, it's mine, right? So he said, okay, I should have asked for more, right? But and then we realized that it was a good tobacco for wrapper. We discovered that there were some other kind of tobaccos that were used as wrappers, etc. So we started to produce more and more. But the original seed came from Indonesia in San Andres. That's what I know.
So the original seed in San Andres came from Indonesia in the first place.
Through these people, yes, that I mentioned, through these Dutch people, yes.
But do you mean by that the Negro San Andres initially was a seed that came to Indonesia, or
no?
Just
I'm talking about the Sumatra.
The Sumatra you were referring
yes.
to, right?
I'm only talking about the Sumatra, yes.
So how many tobacco varietals do you currently grow in Mexico in total?
We grow the Negro San Andres, and we grow two types of Negro San Andres. We are the only ones that produce two types. One, it's the original one, Negro. The other one, it's an hybrid. This is on the Negro San Andres. We grow the Sumatra. On the Sumatra, we grow different types of Sumatra, different hybrids, looking for some different things, size, thinness, etc. And then we grow the Connecticut, but this is every 2-3 years, and it's only for us. And we grow these three types of Cuban seed tobaccos: the Habano San Andres, the Habano 2000, and the Criollo.
Okay. Very interesting. Give us a little bit of perspective, Alejandro. When we talk about the amount of tobacco grown in Mexico, and just to put things into perspective with some of the other growing countries, what are we looking at in terms of the magnitude of the operation and the size, so the amount of tobacco grown in the country?
Well, it's big, it's quite big, and it has increased the amount of hectares since the last 10 years, like every year. However, it's not as big as in other places, I would say. I mean, if we compare the total amount of tobacco that is produced for cigars in Nicaragua versus the amount of tobacco that is produced in San Andres is, I'm not sure, but probably it's one third, I don't know, no, one third, one fourth of the tobacco that is produced in Nicaragua, but it still is a lot. How much? Probably 1,500, 2,000 hectares, probably, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but something like that. And
Interesting.
no, and probably we could grow more, but I mean, I say we as the area, you know, the thing is that we are limited. No, we are not. If you look on Google Earth, for example, into San Andres, no, you will see that we are surrounded by mountains. All the area in San Andres is mountains. Only what is called the San Andres Valley, it's kind of flat, no, but still is not completely even. So that makes it a little bit hard to grow, to have a much bigger extension of land where we can produce tobacco, no, and also the fact that the Negro San Andres is a tobacco that this is something that many people don't know or don't understand. It's a tobacco that doesn't give you too much wrapper, no? That's unfortunate because that's what most people, most manufacturers want, no, need. They want wrapper. Of course, nowadays they are using binders and fillers and everything. But in the past, they were looking up only for wrapper, and the wrapper that comes from the Negro San Andres tobacco seed, it's only about 25% of the whole crop. So you can imagine, no, you can, okay, if you come to me and you say I want wrapper, say okay, yeah, but yes, but what are you going to buy also the rest? No, because 70% is binders and fillers. So that's one of the reasons why we do not produce also more, no? Because then what we do with the rest. Now, and in other places, they also produce a lot of filler, right? So not it's not necessary, let's say, for many factories to also use our filler and our binder, even though it's great also. No? Now, compared to the Sumatra, for example, Sumatra, the yield on the wrapper in general, no, I'm talking of about all qualities, it's from 70 to 80%. So you can you can compare it. It's a big difference. So yes, going back to the amount of tobacco that we produce in San Andres, quite a lot. I think it's never been that big before. Not even in the boom, when the cigar boom was in 94, 95. I don't think there was the same amount of tobacco grown in the area. Now, the good thing now is that it's more steady. It's been, of course, much more steady. Back then, it was only 2 years, 3 years, and that's it. No? And now, so yeah, it's been constantly more or less that since the last 3 years, 4 years, San Andres has been producing the same amount of tobacco.
When you say that for the Negro San Andres, for example, the yield on the wrapper is so low, would you say that the majority of wrapper grade, or a lot of that, is also exported for other manufacturers to use the wrapper, and more of the filler and binder stays in Mexico for
No,
cigars
not anymore.
manufactured in Mexico? Or
No, not anymore. Actually, everything is shipped overseas, well, abroad, no? Now that's basically I guess the way the manufacturer in other places, Dominican or Nicaraguan, has accepted, no, to buy also the rest of the tobacco. Otherwise, they won't get wrapper. Let's put it that way. So, in other words, no. Actually, in Mexico, there's not too many factories, as you may know. So, and no, everything is shipped outside. Filler, binder, and wrappers. Well, not everything. No, we have, of course, for our own production from what my family produces.
for the Negro that I'm trying right now, the wrapper grade Negro San Andres here, it's fascinating how just that little fumo, the little purito, is almost like a holistic stimulation. It has a lot to offer. I mean, this is almost smoking perfectly just by its own, and you don't really miss a lot of other components. I mean, there's some creamy notes going on. It has a little bit of acidity, so it gives you just enough salvation to give you that creamy texture on the palate. Um, Uh, Interestingly enough, it has very little bitterness, or it has very little of that lingering bitter aftertaste. It has a relatively clean and very well behaved impression that it leaves on the palate.
I believe it's got sweetness, kind of like a salty sweetness also, no?
Mhm.
And yes, at certain point of the fermentation, the Negro San Andres can be a little bit bitter or acid or a little bit not. I would say those two, no, a little bit bitter or acid sometimes, no, not something that necessarily has to be in the flavor and the taste of the Negro San Andres. It's mainly this salty sweetness,
Mhm.
what I would say about the main taste characteristic of the Negro San Andres, no? Of course, some earthiness, some smokiness because of the way we cure the tobacco in the barn. We use wood. The earthiness, something that it's a nice earthiness. It's an enjoyable earthiness. Now,
It's
the
almost
low,
borderline on that sort of smoky, chocolatey, like bitter chocolate, aromatic quality.
if you ask me, yes, what kind of sweetness are you talking about? I would say that it's more like cacao, no? Then
Mhm.
is where the
Correct.
acidity comes
Yeah,
comes from a little bit, right? So like dark chocolate, let's say, no?
absolutely.
That's my opinion. No, of course, everybody has its own opinion, but that's what I think. When people ask me, okay, which is the flavor that you would say distinguishes the Neo San Andres? I would say salty sweetness, and the sweetness is like dark chocolate, like cacao. That's what I would say. No, and of course the smokiness and the earthiness. But
I'm
again,
very curious about how the other samples will present themselves, and I'll light up the quemado in just a second. But one
mm,
thing that I sometimes find in ready-made, already blended Mexican cigars is just a touch of a very elegant floral quality, almost like an ethereal top note that, for me, the best way to describe it is slightly floral. I almost find a touch of that in the Negro San Andres here as well. Where do you feel that comes from, or how would you, in your own words, describe that?
well, the lower you get, the more earthiness you get, no? And the more flora, in my opinion. Let me give you an example. Well, answering your question, I believe the Negro San Andres has this particular characteristic of offering completely different flavors depending the where the leaves come from, no? So yes, you can have this floral
Do you
flavor,
mean in terms
no?
of where from the plant or
Yes,
where in the
from one,
valley?
no, from the plant. Yes,
Okay.
from the plant. Yes, you can get this floral. Let me give you an example. One time, many years ago, about almost 12, 13 years ago, I was looking into different tobaccos from our inventory that could create a completely different blend, no? Which was a challenge because we were only using Negro San Andres and only one type of Habano, and that was the Habano 2000. And so I started to look into also tobaccos that could give me some different wrappers, let's say, from the Negro, while the Negro only gives you, or is what is famous for, this dark leaf, right? The Maduro. Anyway, so I wanted to make something different. So I found these leaves that we were not using as wrapper, but they were beautiful. We were actually using them as binders, which was something ridiculous. No? Anyway, and I found this floral taste that you're mentioning. That's why I remember right now, no, about it, because yes, you can get that also, that kind of flavor in the Negro San Andres. So it's, let's say that you can expect many different, depending on what part from the plant is, you can have different flavors, but the flavor that is more characteristic on the Negro San Andres, especially on the Maduro, which is what most people are more familiar with, you have this salty sweetness.
And usually when you're looking for wrapper grades from the Negro San Andres blend, which part of the plant do you get the most wrapper yield
The
out of?
ones in the middle, the ones in the center of the plant.
So I just lit up the Quemado, and it's interesting. It's a completely different world. It's
Oh,
fascinating.
that's one of my favorites, if not the my number one favorite tobacco from the Negro San Andres. This Quemado, it's one of these leaves. I guess you have the same situation with other tobaccos, you know. This is these leaves that have, for whatever reason, they have a lot of oil. These leaves also come mainly from the central part of the plant, right? But for whatever reason, don't ask me, they have a lot of oil. So when you are processing for the first time, even for the first time, processing meaning fermenting, not the tobacco, you start to get right away these leaves in a very, how to say, dark, they start to get, sorry, very dark right away.
Mhm.
And you keep with the fermentation process. You let the pilon go high in temperature, etc. And then you turn it around and turn it around, and these leaves will become darkened and darkened and heavy and very, should say, like a very weird. They would look like a black cardboard, right? Very thick, very thick, heavy. It would they will shrink, and that's where the word comes from. Quemado means burn, so it looks like burnt tobacco. Let's put it that
Mhm.
way, no, because it's really dark. It kind of like shrinks, and but the flavor that you get from there, it's amazing in my opinion. No, what happens is that it's got a lot of, like I said, a lot of oil and also the sugar that the tobacco has. How to say, it fermentates, or it kind of burns really fast, so that's why it becomes dark, so dark right away. So that and we the old days, we didn't use that tobacco. Let's say that we discriminated it because it looked terrible, right? It looked ugly, and it didn't come. That's also the truth. No, it doesn't come in really big quantities. So we would just put it aside because we didn't have any blend, any line to use it for. So we would put it aside. And when I was looking to make another blend, and this is Casa Turrent 1880 limited edition, edición limitada, the sui generis. It's got Maduro wrapper, but the filler, it's got a lot of this kind of tobacco, because this is what I found. I love it, and I started to use it.
It's fascinating. It's absolutely unique in its profile. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, we did multiple different tasting sessions. I did a ABC tasting session with Claudio when we tasted Nicaraguan tobaccos. I mean, a whole different world. Obviously, Philip Wynn and I, we tasted some Pelo de Oro, some stuff that he had way back in the days in Costa Rica, but now Pelo de Oro grown in Ecuador. Um, this is fascinating. The Quemado has a little less of that sweet, salty cocoa note,
Right,
but
right.
it has such a distinct aromatic quality that is very hard to pinpoint. Sometimes, and I don't mean this negatively in any way, shape, or form, but it has almost a soapy quality, like a citrusy brightness to it. And then on the other hand, it also presents itself with a little bit of a sweetness, but kind of a marshmallowy sweetness with some very gentle and elegant notes. So it's absolutely fascinating in terms of the aromatic quality. And on the taste, dense, it leaves a very oily sensation on the palate also. So it has a thick texture to it on the palate.
Yes, it's got what you, I agree 100%. It's got some also a lot of like toasty notes, I would say. Again, like sweet, and in this case, it's got like sweet and sourness at the same
Mhm.
time. Some woodiness, I would say, and some smokiness also.
Do you use this mostly as a little, a little highlight that you incorporate in the blend, in the filler,
Yes, yes,
most
actually.
likely?
That's why we are using it in this edición limitada, because when we decided to create this edición limitada, we really wanted to 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 respect, the name, and to be limited, right? And yes, and when we are explaining about the blend, we mention, of course, that that we're using this kind of tobacco because it is very special.
Earlier, you mentioned that you grow two types of Negro San Andres, the original and a hybrid. Is this the hybrid that you were referring to, or is this a completely different seed
No,
altogether?
no, this is the original one. From
Understood. Okay.
the one that I sent you is the original one. Yes. From the original one to the hybrid, there's some difference, I would say. The original one, it's more the taste is more straightforward. Uh, Even though it's got nice notes, you see that you need to blend it, right? In the hybrid that we produce on the Negro San Andres, it's almost like if it's blend, like if you already have a blend on that tobacco. So it's a little, and in my opinion, it's a little more sweeter, the hybrid, than the traditional.
You were also referring a little bit to the pre-industry process and how you treat the tobacco. Can you talk a little bit for these first two in particular, how the pre-industry process and the fermentation of the Negro San Andres would be different from other processes in Nicaragua or in Dominican, for example?
Well, as you know, everybody has its own uh, secret, right? Or its own way to ferment the tobaccos. Now we have two businesses. One is the growing tobacco operation part, and then the cigar factory. Well, in the old days, the way we used to do it was just to use the humidity that the tobacco had from the farm, from the barn. We would, like everybody else, right? We would start with the fermentation. It would take about 6 months because the purpose, and back then we only had one type of Negro San Andres. So the purpose was to get it dark as much as possible, no? And the most quantity that we could that we could get dark, because that was what the market wanted. Now, the thing is that we realized that the leaves that were coming from the lower parts, let's say the secos, no, the visos, sometimes they wouldn't resist that temperature because we would let the filon go up with temperature quite high, and that would spoil, let's say, the taste of the lower part of the plant, the leaves that were from the lower parts of the plant. So we stopped doing that, no? So what we did was, and then our customers of tobacco, they wanted to do it their own way, finish the wrapper their own way. So what we did was to, instead of going all the way, so 6 months, we now do it for 2, 3 months, and then all together, because like I said at the beginning, we do only one priming. We put in the barns everything together, then we ferment it all together. But since the fermentation nowadays is not that, let's say, aggressive, or we don't let the temperature go high that much, it's fine. The tobacco, the leaves from the lower parts, they resist. And after 2 months, 3 months, we sort the tobacco, and we get the wrappers, what is we take the leaves that will that we're hoping that we get wrapper from there. No, we don't call them wrapper or binder already. So we say, okay, this is, let's say, clean, nice, not broken leaves, large. Okay, this might give us wrapper, right? And then this is definitely, now it's binders. Sorry, we do, but it's binder is also a leaf that is broken. So that's what I'm referring to when I'm saying binder, and feeders. And that we stop. We stop the fermentation of that, no? And then the leaves that we know that could give us wrapper, we continue with the fermentation because they can resist a higher temperature. They can resist a second, let's say this second fermentation, no? That we do in this part of the operation. So that's what we do. And then we select, we do this sorting again, we do this sorting, and then we get the first quality, the second quality, the third quality of wrapper, and also the colors, no? We have 3 colors. We have the dark color, we have an intermediate, and then we have a little bit, let's say like a reddish color, no? So we have the
But would they
reddish,
all fall into what people, very
wrapper.
generically describe as Maduro?
No,
Because
well,
even
that's
the
funny.
reddish one goes into a very dark shade.
Well, from there, I mean, of course, the dark wrapper that we get during this process, yes, it's Maduro already, no? And some people even want to make it really, really black, so they continue with the fermentation, no? To make it dark, like black. Then the intermediate, you can continue with the fermentation to make it a little bit darker, no? You can use also some tricks during the fermentation to make it become darker, yes. Then the other one, let's say the reddish one, that one is not so easy to make it darker, no? You could have the risk of spoiling it, of getting some stains from the wrapper. So it's better that you leave it that way. And actually, that's what people are doing. There are some cigars now that are using that kind of wrapper that I'm specifically talking about, this reddish color, which is not a Maduro, really, no? It's and it's like let's say like an Habano from Ecuador, for example, no?
Mhm.
I don't know what they are saying, honestly. I have no idea. That's them. And but I know that a lot of people are using this kind of wrapper from the Negro San Andres, which is not Maduro.
Also,
And
just to clarify one point, because you said earlier that you don't really separate different primings and you put all the tobacco in the barn in fermentation. Do you sort the tobacco though before you put it in the pilones for the
no,
fermentation? Because you might have different texture and different thickness of the leaf before you
exactly.
put it in the pilones, right?
That's why, yes, we don't do that sorting, but what we do is not to let the pilon go too high in temperature. So we don't spoil these leaves, these secos that we get from the
So you
plant.
have very different textures and different thicknesses of leaves all within the same pilon, but because you
Right.
don't force the fermentation as much, you can still get a relatively even fermentation throughout the different textures in one pilon.
And they all will be okay. That's right. Yes.
Very interesting. And then do you sort them afterwards for texture, or do you just don't care as much about
No,
which part of the plant the leaf
that's a
actually
good
comes from?
point. Yes. No, we classify it, we sort it by many things, no, by size, by not by texture. That's something that we do in the factory for us, no, but we classify it by size, by quality, by let's say by damages, no, and then we get we get everything in the factory. We get what we use, and then we do we do another ferment and sorry another classification, and then we do a classification by thickness, and we process the tobacco according to the thickness in the factory, not in the tobacco operation.
Because usually, when we talk with other manufacturers, predominantly from the Dominican, Honduras, Nicaragua, everybody always worries about the blends being, having certain elements of Ligero. You have some Viso, you have Seco. You focus way more on the primings because that'll eventually also define how the how the cigar combusts, the balance and the harmony of the blend with
And the consistency.
nicotine strength, the consistency, 100%. But would you say you also do that? You just don't do it as much in the tobacco field. You do it in the factory when it comes to the cigar manufacturing.
That's exactly right. So, for example, we have one class of tobacco that we call it Cuarta Clara. And that comes from the lower part of the plant. It's a great tobacco. It's like a seco. However, in that tobacco, you can find 3 different thicknesses, for example. That's something that the manufacturer decides if they separate or not. No, in our case, we do. We do the sorting and we get the thin, the extra thin, and semi-thick, for example. No, that's what you usually get. Sometimes depends on the crop. You can get even 4, no, like a thick leaf also. No? Anyway, so yes, that's something that you have to do, or we believe that we have to do, and yes, that's a rule.
I'm already on the third sample here, so I'm on the Habano 2000, the Banda. It's a fourth
Priming.
Fourth priming. Yeah. So in this case, do you classify it as different primings here?
Now, the Habanos, all the Habanos, in all the Habanos, we do primings. We do first, second, third, and fourth. We only do fourth, no? Some other people, with the Habano, with the Cuban seed, they do more, no? For example, we, in San Andres, with Sumatra, we do 8 or even 9 primings sometimes, no? So it depends on the tobacco, it depends on the place. Nicaragua works one way, we work different way with the Habano. So, but for example, in this one, in the Habano, it's a must that we need to sort it again because, for example, the first priming, you don't have that many different kind of leaves, basically very straightforward. It's like a seco. That's it, no? Then the second priming, you can get a little bit of everything except of thick leaves because second priming doesn't give you thick leaves. Then the third priming, you can get the 5 different thicknesses of the leaves, no? Very thin one, thin, semi-thick, thick, or extra thick, no? So yes, we do this sorting. I'm not sure exactly what thickness is the one that you're smoking. I don't know if it says somewhere.
I'll show you right here. So it reads Banda.
Well, if it's
Habano
Banda,
2000.
Banda means binder. If it's Banda, it should be either thin or semi-thick. So it's not that heavy.
One observation that I have with all 3 samples thus far, both the wrapper grade Negro San Andres, the Quemado, but also this binder grade Habano 2000 here, none of them hit me with a lot of nicotine strength. Quite the opposite. They all present themselves in a very well-behaved and I almost dare say elegant way, which I found interesting. I mean, comparatively, when I did the tasting of Nicaraguan tobaccos with Claudio, these samples were much more expressive in terms of a certain roughness almost on the palate, a spicy characteristic, a bold pepper, but also you feel that there's definitely some nicotine impact from them. I don't get that here at all.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yes, because the Habano 2000 is one of the tobaccos that takes longer because the amount of nicotine it's got. So I'm sure, and I believe that's the reason why I ship them to you that way, because I know that it could be sometimes difficult to not to get that nicotine punch, no? In the Habano, in particular, in the Habano 2000. It's a tobacco that even if it's been there fermentating for more than a year, you still get, you know, in from the tobacco in the pilon, this intense smell of nicotine. But then this tobacco should be very, very fermented and even aged properly, no?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yes.
I've had these samples sitting in my humidor for quite a while, at least, well, it's getting close to almost a year. So they had plenty of rest in my humidor, and I'm sure that helped them settle down and present them in a very well-rounded and elegant way. But it's also interesting that curious about the criollo and the other Habano wrapper. Um, as I said, I don't really get much of a bold spice characteristic. It's again, it's a very gentle tobacco with beautiful sweetness up front, just a little bit of saltiness, but way less than with the Negro San Andres. And yes, I do feel a little bit of spicy characteristics, particularly on the retrohale. But yeah, fascinating to explore these.
Yes, I think you described exactly as I would think about it, no? Yes, it's got some sweetness. It's not as sweet as I wouldn't compare with the negro because that's a different kind of sweetness, but with the rest of the Cuban seeds that we produce in San Andres, it doesn't have that sweetness. It's like a balance of sweetness, strength, like you said, like some pepperiness and other flavors, not different. Yeah, nothing to do with the negro, nothing to do with the other habanos.
Alejandro,
I
how
would
do you
say.
feel about the way that nowadays people look at Mexican tobacco as ingredients in their kitchen? You know, when we think of all the blenders in the different factories, whether it's in the Dominican, Honduras, Nicaragua, or even the ones in Mexico, and how they use these tools, these ingredients that you provide them with. How do you feel about people's perception of Mexican tobaccos? Because ever so often it feels to me that either people they enjoy the Mexican cigar, so they have a more in-depth familiarization with the tobaccos, or they basically focus on Mexican wrapper from the San Andres Valley, right? What's your take on that?
Well, okay, let me talk a little bit about everything. No, it's got to do with the fact that the tobacco is produced, I mean, it's grown, it's cured, it's fermented the right way. Of course, all the tobaccos, they taste better when they have that, right? Well, the Negro San Andres, how can I describe it? It's very special, no? If you miss one of these steps, probably it will taste not so good, no? And especially the lower parts of the plant. This is my opinion also, no? It will get this taste that some people would remember about the taste of the tobacco from Mexico, no? A little bit herbal, grassy, like hay, very earthy, no? That's not good, or that's something that I do not enjoy, no, at all. But it's got to do with the seed even, no? If you if you're very careful with the preservation of the seeds, no? Every crop, if you grow the tobacco in the right soil and you feed the soil, meaning you use the right fertilizers for that particular soil, if you do the priming at the right time, no, not before, not after, if you cure the tobacco with the right temperature, with the right conditions, etc., and you do the fermentation the right, you will get the greatest Negro San Andres tobacco, the greatest taste. So now people are realizing that when a tobacco is produced that way, you will you will have, like you said, great ingredients, to play with. And then you will realize that you can blend this tobacco, meaning the Negro San Andres, from this part of the plant, or this class, with this other tobacco from Nicaragua, or from Peru, or from Colombia, or from Dominican Republic, etc. No? So I believe it's one of the greatest tobaccos, the good Negro San Andres, meaning when it's produced and harvest and cured and fermented the right way, is one of the best tobaccos that you could get in all the world. No, so people are realizing that. So now they are getting less. They are less afraid of playing with it. And what does it give? Why people, when they realize that they can do that, what does it offer to them? I think it offers a variety of flavors, like I said, because Negro San Andres is one of these tobaccos that you can even make a great cigar only using that particular tobacco, the Negro San Andres. Not all the tobaccos have that. No. Now, so you can have this floral taste that you mentioned. You can have this nice earthiness that we also mentioned. You can have this sweet and salty taste characteristic of the Negro San Andres, and it's the end when you blend it, no, with other tobaccos. I'm not really familiar with other tobaccos, but I'm sure that the possibility that the chances that you get a great blend are very high.
Comparatively now, Alejandro, the Criollo 98 has a more distinct sort of upfront impact. It has a brighter and a little bolder spicy characteristic, particularly on the retrohale. So it has more of that sort of white pepper, but in a very bright and shiny way. It almost has a bit of a tingling sensation in the nose, if that makes sense. So it has a bit of a piquancy to it, even, which is interesting.
Probably it's, probably that particular tobacco is not as fermented as the other ones. No, that's from what you're saying, I understand it's a little bit more intense. No, yeah, I mean, that's fortunately doesn't have the thickness or the year.
It just
But
says class 5, I believe, on the bottom, right?
yeah. That tobacco, because I can recall a little bit of the types of tobacco that we ferment and why we named it that way. That tobacco didn't have, let's say, it went through a slow fermentation. No, so probably before using it, what we would need to do is to give it like another touch of fermented, like a stronger fermentation for a short period of time. That's it, to get rid of all the excess of ammonia, etc. No, but that particular tobacco, the Criollo United, is one of my favorites in terms of sweetness. I believe the sweetness that you get from there, it's very, very, like, very noticeable, let's say, very strong. I mean, this is one of, when you say, okay, in our case, no, if you ask me which is the tobacco from you that you believe has the greatest sweetness or the strongest sweetness, I would say is the Criollo 98. No, it's got, and at the same time, it's got some body, it's got some strength, not that much, but it does have, no,
A
compared
bit
to the other
bolder
one.
compared to the others.
Right,
Yeah.
compared to the other Habanos. In my opinion, the Habano 2000 is the strongest one. No, it's not as sweet again, but it's got a very unique taste. Different. The Criollo 98 grown in San Andres, it's very, very sweet. That's and tasty and bold. Now, the Habano San Andres, which is in the samples that you received, is marked as MX, no? Habano
Yeah,
MX.
that's the last one.
That is very light. That because that tobacco is produced for the purpose to get wrapper. So, the leaves are not so thick, it's a different process that we apply to this tobacco. So that's why it's less strong. It's still
What
sweet, but not as much.
Alejandro, what are we looking at in terms of the aging process after the fermentation? How long do you usually keep the bales resting before you use them either at your own factory or you sell them and ship them to other manufacturers?
Okay, fillers and binders, it goes from a minimum of 6 years of aging. What we consider aging is that after the fermentation, we process the tobacco, we strip it, we take off the stem, we dry it, and we put it in bales, and we let it rest for a minimum of 6 months. And then it can go up to 2 years, 3 years. That's usually what we do. Now, we have some tobaccos that they are virgins, no, they haven't been touched, and they've been there sitting for 10 years. No, we didn't do any process on them because we had no need for that because we were not using them in any blend. So, but we have it, and it's a great tobacco, no? And the time does something on them, no? Also, you get, let's say it's how can I say, they are aged in bales, basically, But still, even though they've been sitting there for 10 years, you have to ferment them, no? It will take less time because they have worked some, but still need some fermentation. But the taste that you can get from those tobaccos are great. But if you are asking me, hey, which one, which are the aging? I mean, according to the normal process, let's say, that we use the tobacco, that we let age the tobacco, it's a minimum 6 months, and then it can go up to 2 years, 3 years. But we have tobacco that we haven't fermented, that it's been sitting there for 10 years.
Beautiful. So the Habano that you described as MX, well, first of all, you can see just in terms of color, even though it's relatively
Right.
dark here, you can see that the color shade is drastically different compared to the Criollo 98 or even the other samples of the Negro San Andres and the Quemado. This is the lightest out of all of them.
Right. Yes. That's the one that we use as wrapper. I mean, that kind of tobacco, that variety of Cuban seed. And that's, like I said, in about the aging, no, the filler and binder. Now, the wrapper, that's completely different. No, what we do with the wrapper is because it's got to go through a slow process, no, so we can get the most out of it, so we don't get stains on the wrapper. We let it ferment. We do a different kind of fermentation. We do call it a cold fermentation, no? We have a room with air condition and very high humidity, and we have the wrapper over there, especially the light wrappers, meaning the light colors wrapper, no? The ones that we do not want to change because the line where we use that wrapper has to be that way. It has to be, the wrapper has to be light. So we put in this room these wrappers, and we just let it there. And every week we turn around the pilones, and you see that it's working because you have the smell, of course, in the room. When you have the smell, that's the best way to see if the tobacco is working, right? And also we inspect the leaves. We see that it's changing. And when you're familiar with the tobaccos, you can notice, no, that it's fermenting. And of course, the best way is to smoke it, not to smoke it, to smell it. It shouldn't be in the nose. It shouldn't irritate the taste. It should be more clean. Shouldn't leave you some dirtiness like junk tobacco does, etc. So that's the way we check that. We make sure that the tobacco is working, no? And we leave it there for 2 years, 3 years, and then we use it. The wrappers in general, they are not fermented that much. No, I'm talking about in general, no? Right, the Maduro is something different because you don't have that much risk that you will get stains. I mean, unless you do it on appropriately, no? But the Negro is easier, let's say, to fermentate, no? That's also one of the reasons why people love the Negro San Andres Maduro wrapper, because it's not as hard as other Maduro wrapper that exists in the market, no? It's not as hard as fermentate. Anyway, but going back to this tobacco, to the Habano San Andres, about the aging, it's basically the process that we look at ash. Nice. And we do that. We don't have, in terms of wrappers, only small amount tobacco that it's been aged. No, we basically keep with the fermentation. No, we keep with the fermentation. What eventually could be done is like, okay, this wrapper, this amount of wrapper it's done, it's fermented already. Okay, then we would put it in bales and let it rest there, right? That would be the aging. So in that way, we have, I mean, in that conditions, we have some wrappers with probably an extra 2 years old wrapper, 3 years the most, no, 6-year-old wrapper, that's the most that we get. But usually what we use constantly is 2 to 3-year-old wrapper.
Talk to me a little bit about this tobacco in particular. Now, what I don't find here compared to the other ones is that overt upfront sweetness. It's less prominent with this tobacco for sure, and you get at least I get sort of a distinct salty quality on the palate, a very clean finish in general. But again, some of that piquancy, particularly on the retrohale, with a slight peppery quality, but relatively bright, relatively clean, and it doesn't have that sweetness up front like the other samples have.
No, it's not as sweet as the previous one, as the Criollo 98, but however, it's got very distinguished flavor. It's I believe it's more floral, like very, very floral, no? With some sweetness, no? And with some small hints of different flavors. What can I say? No, probably a little vanilla, a little bit cedar here and there, no? That would be my description for this particular type of tobacco.
Out of all these samples that we tasted now, where do you feel the seed variety expresses itself the most, and where do you feel that the unique terroir of where the tobacco is grown comes to shine?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I think it's just there's a straight relationship with the seed and the terroir, no? The Negro, for example, we usually grow it in the terroirs which are a little bit more sandy. The Habanos, we produce it, all of them, in the soils that are a little bit more like clay, a little bit more heavy. And then each one gets its own taste, no? Which one delivers the most authentic, let's say, flavor, or like, I believe each one, honestly, in that sense, because the Cuban seeds, in my opinion, they grow better in this type of soil, all of them, no? No matter if it's the Habano Mexico or the 2000 or the other one. Now, the good thing is that each of them maintains its own characteristics. I don't know if that answers the question, or more or less.
It makes absolute sense. I mean, what's fascinating is that with all 5 of these, even though they're different seed varietals, they express themselves differently, they all seem to have a cohesive theme, if that makes sense. They all are unmistakably a world of their own, which is unlike any of the other tobacco samples that I've tasted in the Dominican or some of the Nicaraguan tobaccos. You know, when I tasted the Criollo 98, Corojo 99, from Eduardo Fernandez, for example, coming from Aganorsa. Um, this is so far removed from that, and they all five of them have a very distinct cohesiveness, if that makes sense. So unmistakably, they're part of something that ties them together, which, in my humble opinion, can only be the terroir and can be the expression of where the tobacco is grown.
Right. I don't know exactly what percentage has to do the terroir versus the seeds, you know, but again, no, it depends. For example, you're familiar with the Cameroon wrapper, right? We tried to grow, well, we produced some, if I'm not mistaken, the Cameroon supposedly came from Sumatra, no? I
It's all
believe.
Sumatra seed. Yes,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
Sumatra seed. Well, we produce a Cameroon seed that we found somewhere that was many years ago in San Andres, thinking that we could produce something similar, right? And nothing. It's the same Sumatra as the one that we produce. You know,
Mhm.
so there the terroir had to do a lot with it. No, either the seed was not strong enough to preserve its characteristics, or the terroir, you know, beat that. I couldn't tell you, no, but that's an example of that. It's got to do with both.
Historically speaking, Alejandro, I believe it was until the late 90s when tobacco imports into Mexico were either so highly taxed because the duties were so high, but essentially Mexican-made cigars were puros, right?
Right.
Um,
Yes.
if, if I'm not mistaken, then that's not the case anymore. And obviously, you can play with different components. So your arsenal of different ingredients has enlarged. Um, but when you approach blending, and this is a very interesting question that Albert posted in the chats earlier, um, is there a particular profile that you're looking for? Is there a particular flavor combination that you're looking for when you create the blends that sort of speaks Casa Turrent and makes sort of a house style that you're trying to achieve?
Yes, we always look to find a body, let's say, not strength specifically, but body, taste, no, enjoyment, and uniqueness. That's basically what we are looking for when we develop a blend. And talking about what you mentioned, yes, before we couldn't bring tobaccos from other places because there was actually not, it wasn't even, okay, it was for two reasons. One, it was not allowed, period. No, it was forbidden. And then they opened in one or two uh, origins from where you could bring in some tobaccos, but the tax was very high. So, okay, so we went through that process of getting rid of all that, you know, the duties and and to get the permits. It was a phytosanitary issue that there was there. No, who knows why? It was basically an excuse. Anyway, but when we were able to achieve that, to be able to import, we started to import with some tobaccos, specifically from Nicaragua, because I believe some tobaccos from Nicaragua, they blend excellent with the tobaccos from Mexico. So I think we did a very, very good job, and we had great blends. Now, unfortunately, it became more difficult to get tobaccos from Nicaragua. It became more difficult to get the right tobaccos, no, to have consistency on the tobaccos and the availability of the tobaccos. So what we decided to do was this exactly, to produce different kind of Cuban seeds in San Andres to process them differently, to use them at different levels of fermentation, no, to make our lines different from one to each, from one to the other, no. So that's something that I had to do to to avoid using from other places and to stick with what we could produce, to have more control, etc. And I think I've been lucky up to now. I have several lines using, let's say, not exactly the same, 100% the same tobaccos, but pretty much the same, but different, of course, primings, different agings or fermentation, different thicknesses. And if you smoke, for example, our Casa Turrent 1880 Claro, no? And you smoke the Casa Turrent 1880 Oscuro, for example, probably it's got 90% of the same tobacco, but the taste is completely different. You would never imagine that they have the same tobaccos. That was something that we worked very hard on, and well, so far, so good. However, I'm sure that if we want to continue to create more and more blends, probably we would need eventually to get some tobacco from here and there, you know, to have a different touch.
When you think about Mexican tobaccos being used in other blends and cigars coming from Nicaragua, from Honduras, from the Dominican, what would you like to see more, or what would you like to see differently in the usage of Mexican tobacco in other manufacturers' cigars?
Well, I believe we kind of talk about it a little bit once, you and me, about it's not only the country where it comes from, right? Is it is the seed? Is it region? No, is the even the farm, for example, like in wines, right? Is the aging of the tobacco or the fermentation and then aging? So I think probably that's too much to ask, no? But at least to say, okay, this tobacco is from this is this kind of tobacco, no, not only tobacco from Mexico, no, to be more specific, this is Negro San Andres or this is Habano from Mexico. That would help, no? And the aging also, but that's, you know, that's up to the manufacturer, no, if they mention it or not. But at least answering your question, at least what kind of tobacco, I think that would be very helpful.
Do you also think that the usage of Mexican tobaccos, particularly when it comes to filler and binder tobaccos for various different blends, could be explored a little more? And Cameroon is an interesting analogy also, because everybody in the cigar world thinks of Cameroon tobacco as a fantastic wrapper, but Cameroon can make for a very interesting component and a little hint if you manage to incorporate it in the right way in the filler, for example. But that's not something that you hear very often or that people don't really focus on a lot. Do you think the same is true for Mexican tobaccos?
Yes, of course. And like I said, in the old days, yes, people were only using Negro San Andres for wrapper. That's it. No, they would come to San Andres. They would ask, "Hey, I want 1,000 bales of Negro San Andres wrapper," and you would say, "Yes, but what will I do with the rest?" Oh well, I don't know. Then the answer would be no. I cannot sell you the wrapper because it's not worth it for me. Then people started, like also we mentioned here, now started to realize that it's good tobacco to use. So they are using it, I guess, well, I'm sure they are using it, no? In what amount? I guess they are using it in a fair amount in their blends. Whether they are mentioning or not, I'm not sure, no? That's something that I believe they should, no? They should just, they also should mention that, yes.
Great point. And just one thing that I would like to add, which keeps fascinating me the more I smoke through all these, Just to remind everybody, I'm smoking pure grade tobaccos. So these are just individual samples of 5 different tobaccos. These aren't ready-made blends. These are just individual pure grade tobacco samples. But all of them give me quite a lot of balance, like an inherent balance to all these individually. I could almost enjoy all of them individually for what they are. And yet I'm not really wondering like how could this work in a blend because they all have a relatively holistic stimulation of the palate when it comes to the different taste sensations with a very interesting and broad aromatic spectrum. um, and I don't really have that experience often when sampling other tobaccos pure grade, because usually you find that they're relatively linear in one particular dimension. And you can imagine as to how they could contribute to a blend, but they're not necessarily very enjoyable just on their own by themselves. Um, why would you say that is? Is that due to the pre-industry and how you ferment the tobaccos? Or is it just an inherent quality that you find with the tobaccos that you grow in general?
I think it's
And I
got to
mean,
do with.
would you agree in the first place? Even it could be my very personal and subjective
No, you're
experience
right.
here,
You're
but
you're, you're completely right. But it's got to do with different things. It's got to do with the type of tobacco again, with the seed and with the fermentation. Yes, there are some tobaccos that at certain level of fermentation they taste okay. They are smokable. They are enjoyable, and they take. But probably they are at, just to give you a number, no, they are only at 60% of fermentation. You would say, wow, that's not that much. Well, yeah, because yes, but uh, it's enough for that particular tobacco to be, probably won't be the greatest one, but it's already enjoyable. It's got some,
Mhm.
let's say, some spiciness, no, some pepperiness, because it still's got some ammonia, but it doesn't give you the this dirtiness, whatever. At 60% level of fermentation, and that tobacco taste uh, very specific. No, it's got a very specific flavor at that level. If you let fermentate more, exactly that same tobacco, no, all the way to 90%, let's say, no, you will get different kind of flavors, of course. Probably more bold, probably more like if it was a blend already, not as linear, like you said, as it was when it was 60% fermentation. So my answer is it's got to do with the type of tobacco, the level of fermentation, yes. And you have to realize that when you smoke each different tobacco by itself, no, alone, the pure tobacco, it's one taste that you get. Then if you smoke it combined with other tobacco, I mean, if you smoke, if you have another cigar or kind of a cigar of a different tobacco and you put them together and you smoke, you will get another taste. If you add a third one, no, you will get another taste. And then if you add the binder and that's the magic about the cigars, right? For example, last time, just to give you, I was in the factory and I smoked a cigar right from the table, no? And I had some slight notes of acidity. So there was nothing really to worry about, but we all want to make our cigars perfect, right? So I said, I called my people, I told them, okay, bring me the different types of tobaccos that we are using in this particular uh, table. And so we smoked each of them. And I started to feel some acidity. I don't know why, probably it was psychological or something. But I started to feel some acidity in most of them. And I said, no way. I mean, I started to really, really worry. And then I said, oh my God. And then I said, okay, hold on. So I started to smoke more and more of these finished cigars that they had already made during the day and previous days, etc. And they were great. So my point is that once you put all the tobaccos together, then you get a completely different taste. I'm sure it has happened to you.
very, very true. Absolutely. Um, Just one brief last question on that. You've seen the industry change throughout the years and over the decades. Do you feel that the general style of blending, and I'm talking in very generic sort of industry terms now, do you feel that has shifted and changed over the years because of either changing consumer preferences or because the manufacturers are trying to go in a different route, either proactively or responding to what they think the market is demanding?
Well, I think what we all still, probably the old school guys, no, still look for is like what I also mentioned, no, boldness, taste, enjoyment. I didn't mention this, but it's one of the most important things, balance, right? Aroma, the aftertaste. That's the way, that's the way I believe a cigar should be made, no, with all those things. And in terms of strength, I think people, what we as a manufacturer, or manufacturers, what they look for is to offer enjoyment, no, certain strength, because it's also got to do with it, and flavor, and in my opinion, more identity. No, I love when I smoke a cigar. Honestly, nowadays I don't smoke other cigars because I found them very similar. I'm not saying that they are wrong, no, don't misunderstand me, but very similar. And when I find a cigar that it's got a unique taste, no, I respect it very much, because that's one of the most important, that's one of the challenges that we all have, no, to deliver, that our cigars deliver certain smell, certain aroma, certain taste that people will be able to identify, no? So, but going back to your specific question, yeah, I think honestly, most people are doing a great effort to make better cigars. In terms of the blends, yes, there are some, I think, some people who experiment from here, from there. They probably add some things here and there, right? I don't know. I wouldn't do that. What else? I think there are also some people who are are putting the tobacco leaves inside the cigar differently than the way it should be, to deliver more strength, or to deliver strength right away, right when you
Like
light the
front loading
cigar,
the
right?
cigars?
Yes, exactly. So you can feel the taste and the strength right away, instead of waiting, couple of minutes, which is the traditional way, I think that's what I notice, the most.
Very interesting. Albert, over to you. You had a question in the comments.
I just try to unmute myself. um, Hola, Alejandro. Mucho gusto.
Hola, mucho gusto, Albert.
My Spanish is broken, so I'm not gonna go on my question in Spanish. But I had a little bit specific question. It's about trends and such. What has been happening in over the past 20 years? So, as in number of tobacco farmers in Mexico, well, reportedly, supposedly, in 1990s were 15,000 farmers growing tobacco, and it declined to 3,000, in recent years. So could you, a little bit confirm these figures, or share maybe your insights on the, factors contributing to that decline? Or is it a decline, or actually it's been growing, and those numbers that the industry was sharing was not accurate?
No. Actually, it's growing. It's been growing since the last 10 years a lot. Now, when you say farmers, I don't know specific if you are talking about people that work on the fields, or people that have their own farms and produce tobacco, because that's That's a huge quantity still. I mean, 3,000 people, 3,000 farmers is huge, no? In San Andres, if you ask me, farmers of all different sizes, people that have even 1 hectare, let's say, and up, right? 1, 3, 5, 10, 20, that produces 50, 40. All those farmers, which I call farmers, probably all together, they add not more than, what should I say, than 50, for example, right? But for example, we grow, for example, ourselves, we grow in total 400 hectares. Then there's other people who grow 100 hectares. There's another people or many people who grow 50 hectares. So we are one farmer or considered as one farmer. Then there are probably 10 guys, 10 farmers, no, that they produce each of them 50 hectares, no? So that's 500, etc. So it goes that way, no? But 3,000 farmers, unless they told you about people that work on the fields, that's a different story. That probably is right, no? But still, I mean, going to your question, that there has been a decrease. No, not really. Not actually. No, I would say what has been, it's an adjustment. Let's put it that way. People that were not in the business at all, never, that they saw this as a good opportunity of making money really fast, right? So let's say probably their business was, I don't know, construction, no? So they had some money and they said, okay, I know somebody that can grow tobacco for us, let's invest. And then they became tobacco producers. But after 2, 3 years that they realized that was not easy, then they quit. Okay, so you have people that, yes, they have stopped, no? But also on the other hand, you have people that have continued to grow, or that they have even increased their production.
That's a good answer. Well, don't trust what Google and other sources tell you. That's a good example why, this show is excellent in that, line. Okay, so another numbers crunching question a little bit. So supposedly in Mexico there is over 1,000 dormant volcanoes, like tiny small ones. So it just indicates that's a lot of good terroir for tobacco growing, because the soil should be, volcanic soil. But that said, in that diverse geography, well, San Andreas is the dominant, area, but there must be other regions that actually can produce tobacco. They just haven't been explored or exploited. Do you see that as a potential, like expanding on that, in other regions? Or that's also fake news, everything has been explored, and San Andreas is just, top notch. Nobody can even, compare.
No. Yes, of course. There are places that have potential, yes, and places that they have been explored in the past, and that we all know that it's possible to produce good tobacco there, and that it can be very good even for other type of tobacco that were never explored. That's something that we don't know, no? But yes, I can tell you about parts in the state of Veracruz. San Andres is quite unique because it's surrounded by, like you said, volcanoes, right? Is it the only area where you have that, no? Volcanoes specifically. It's in the south of the state of Veracruz. Now, you have some places in the north of the state of Veracruz that where still people produce tobacco, dark tobacco, but for cigarettes, for example, no? But I'm sure if we find certain area within that region and try with different tobaccos, it wouldn't surprise me that we can discover something very, very interesting, no, in that part of Veracruz. Then in the old days, people used to grow tobacco in another place, which is right in the border on the state of Oaxaca and Veracruz. And it was a great tobacco. It was a strong, of course, it was used, I believe, also it could be used for wrapper. It was called Valle Nacional. It's actually in the state of Oaxaca, but very close with Veracruz. That was one of the greatest tobacco. But then the blue mold came, and since it's an area where there's it concentrates a lot of humidity, and that's what produces the blue mold, it was impossible to keep growing over there. But again, now with all these seeds that are resistant to blue mold and changing the season, or you can probably get some tobacco from there, and also to expect to have a great tobacco. So you have the north part of Veracruz, you have this part, and also in the south, there's also this state called Tabasco, like the sauce, Tabasco, and they also produce. Sorry, not they don't produce, but there are some areas which also you could expect to get some good tobacco. Why we don't go there? You need time, right? You need time, you need money, you need infrastructure, you need people to help you, a lot of things. No? San Andres has been growing tobacco since 1850. There's a huge tradition that passes on to generation. People know some better than others, but they know how to grow tobacco. In these places, basically, you would need to start from zero. No?
Makes sense. And then the last question, just riding on this answer. So, talking about current production, well, everybody knows that Nicaragua probably produces more than 60% what U.S. consumes. It's like majority, of the market. The question is, where the Mexico stands. So what is the capacity of Mexico? Are you guys just scratching the surface of how much land you're using at the moment? I mean, I imagine just based on numbers you said, it's like a couple of thousands of hectares being used at the moment. So is it possible to expand? Like, are you guys currently cultivating, say, 5% of available, land, suitable land, or is it, I'm just trying to gauge what the potential for Mexican tobacco to grow and get that, say, U.S. market or global market in comparison to Nicaragua.
Yes, I believe the limit is much, much less than in other places, than in Nicaragua. And because of the conditions, like I said, we are surrounded by mountains. How much can we grow compared to where we are now? What can I say? Probably 50%, right? That we can produce more. If we are producing 1,500 hectares, how much more, growing, planting, how much more can we produce? Probably 2,500, so an extra 1,000. More than that, it would be, if you want to produce them with less risk, the proper way, exactly, it's difficult to grow more than that. You could expand a little bit here and there, but with a huge risk, and nobody's willing to do that, no? Because agriculture is already a risk, right? Because there are factors that you cannot control. And if you are playing with an additional risk, then forget it, What am I talking about? For example, soils that are good for growing tobacco. Yes, there are more in the area and outside the area. Yes, I don't know if as good, but I think quite good. Now, the issue is that, for example, the winds. There's a long period of time during the year that we have strong winds coming from the north. And sometimes they come really, really strong, meaning like 100 miles per hour, for example, no? So that can destroy the tobacco in half hour. So, and we in San Andres, we are more or less protected by the mountains. They block the wind that's coming from the north part. So again, no, yes, it could be possible, but with a high risk.
Well, thanks a lot. Muchas gracias. That's a very good answer. So it's filled quite a big gaps, in the knowledge. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Albert, many thanks for the question. Alejandro, this has been such a fascinating flavor experience and such a great journey of Mexican tobaccos. Thank you very, very much. Rosalie, welcome. Good to see you. Please chime in if you have a question or a comment.
Well, I was gifted this cigar from Ricardo Carione, I
Okay,
think 2 years
that's
ago,
my favorite. Uh-huh.
and Dave. And when I saw the post on Instagram that you were coming, I said that just I don't know the blend of this one, so I just want to know the blend of this cigar, which is an edition limitada by you. So may I please know the? I'm really enjoying it. As you can see,
Thank you very much.
the layers of the
Thank you.
ash.
Yes.
So when
Well,
they came to the shop, they gave me this one. So I'm really enjoying it now. I just want to know the blend of this. Thank
all
you.
right. This is a very interesting blend. This blend took us about 2 years to create it. We used the oldest wrapper that we had from Negro San Andres, from uh, Maduro, and we looked for the thickest wrapper. We cared more. We cared more for the thickness, for the body, and of course for the aging than any other thing. So we gave priority to, we said first age and then beauty, right? In terms of the wrapper. Then the binder that we started to use was a Criollo 98 binder, and a double binder from Criollo 98. That was another thing that we did. You have to be very, very careful when you're using two binders, because you may have the risk of having a burning issue, no? So the binders have to be very, very aged. You have to make sure that they burn properly. And then the filler, it's Negro San Andres tobacco, and it's this kind of tobacco that I mentioned, this quemado, the one with a lot of oil, that it becomes dark very, very fast during the fermentation process. And it's not that it's fermented, but at the same time, it's got some little bit of spiciness, no, because it didn't fermentate 100%, let's say, no, and we couldn't fermentate it more. And then it's got Habano 2000 in the filler, so it's got already two types of Cuban seed, and it's got more of the Criollo in the filler. So it's got Criollo, Negro, and Habano 2000 in the filler. It's got double binder of Criollo 98, and it's got the San Andres Maduro wrapper.
Well, thank you very much for that knowledge. This is really
No,
enriching
thank
for.
you.
Can I have one more question?
Sure.
Of course, Rosalie, as many as you
Yeah,
like.
because we only stock 2 brands of Mexican cigars in our shop. What do you think is the edge of the Casa Turrent compared to the other Mexican companies? Not just the Mexican cigar that we have now, but with the other Mexican cigar makers.
Where are you based? Sorry?
We are in Harrogate in England, and we have the Casa Turrent, your cigars,
Oh, okay. Well,
and
thank
another
you very
brand, which
much.
is the Casa 1910. We both enjoy them. So,
I appreciate very much your support. Well, I will talk about me. I cannot talk about others. No. But again, the careness that we put into the seed, again, the preservation of the original seed, no, that has to do a lot with it. No, each year we do a big effort to preserve the main characteristics, well, all the characteristics of all the particulars tobacco seeds that we produce. That's one thing. Then, while we are not producing anything on our farms, we grow a certain type of bean that enrichness, let's say, our farms, no? Then during the production of the tobacco, of course, we use the proper fertilizers at the right time, etc. We do the harvesting the way it should be. We do the curing with the time frame that it should be, with the temperature that it should be. Then the fermentation, that's also very, very important. I mean, every single stage is very important, and we do care very, very much about them. And we personally take care of the production of the tobacco. This is a family business, and that it's been since many, many years. We are very passionate about it, and therefore we are very careful at each stage. No, so during the fermentation, like I said, there's let's say a general fermentation which takes place right after the curing process. That's a very short fermentation process, and then we do the next fermentation in the factory, which it's done very, very how can I say, it's according to each type of tobacco, no? And why? Because we want each blend to taste different, first place, and we want to all of the blends to have what I mentioned, no? To deliver enjoyment, to deliver pleasure, to deliver balance, and to deliver uniqueness. So that is something that if you don't have the tobacco, if you don't have enough tobacco, no, to do that, to be able to play with this, it's very difficult, no? So we are lucky that we produce our own tobacco. I'm lucky that I have a good inventory of tobacco in the factory that allows me to do this, to take the time, because that's one of the most important in the process of the tobacco, no? Time. You have to let the tobacco work by itself, no? There shouldn't be any pressure on the process, no? So that's something that we do. So that's what I can tell you about us, no?
Thank you very much, sir, for your answer. Really
Thank you.
enriching for our knowledge to be in front of the customers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Alejandro,
Reinhard. Thank you.
over to Tejan.
Hi, Alejandro. Really, really nice, talk. Very informative. I would
Thank you
like
very
to know
much.
your opinion, or what you do, or do you do any of the cigar aging? You know, this is such a myth to me. You know, a lot of people talk about. You explained very well about tobacco aging, fermentation, aging, and so forth. You know, but in your opinion, does tobacco or cigar, once it's made, right? Once cigars is rolled, does it still gain any quality by aging it, but just leaving it there in the right conditions? Because a lot of people say it does, but I don't know. I'm not so convinced. That's why I ask experts like you, do they do it, or how do they feel about it? What do you think about it?
Thank you very much. And this is a great question. And let me tell you something. I believe it. One, I can tell you about the cigars that we produce with the tobacco that we use, no, which is basically our tobaccos. I can tell you exactly what I've seen, no, and I can tell you 100% what has happened to them, no. We have cigars that has been aged for 20 years, no, because my father has in his humidor at his house, he's got some cigars for many years, 20, 25 years. They are the same as the cigars that we have been storing for 6 months on, no? Now, how you have to be really an expert on our cigars, not in general, no, but you have to be an expert on our cigars to be able to notice any difference, no? mean, for example, if you ask me, really, you didn't notice any difference? Well, I can say yes. Probably they were a little bit smoother. They had no nicotine sensation, for example, no, because it goes away through time. The nicotine you can see even in the cellophane, that the cellophane becomes yellow, no, after a certain time. So that's normal. The taste of nicotine or the aroma, it goes away more. Yes, smoother. It is smoother, but that's it. If you ask me, is it a much great cigar? The answer is no. No, honestly. Now, in my opinion, what happens, I mean, this is the opposite. No, what happens many times is that the manufacturer, the company that makes the cigars, they don't let the cigar rest enough. So in other words, they make the cigar, they let it stay in their aging room for 2-3 weeks, and then they pack it and they ship it, right? So when you go to the store and you see that cigar, you take it, or you buy the box, you smoke the cigar, probably you feel something, I don't know, that doesn't convince you, okay? You let that box stay for another 6 months, well, for 6 months, no, and you taste that cigar again, probably that cigar gain flavor because the tobacco, the flavors of the tobaccos merit, no, more than the humidity that was on the cigar, because that's normal. When you make a cigar, the tobaccos are with a high level of humidity. After you leave those cigars for a certain time, that humidity goes away and the tobaccos merit. So yes, it is very probably that you will get a better cigar. Yes, but that has to do with the fact that the manufacturer didn't let the cigar rest enough. Now, in our case, what we do is we let because what we have to be concerned is very concerned about the fermentation and the aging on the tobacco. That's what we are looking for. Once we make the cigar, yes, we let it rest minimum 2 months, up maximum, ideally would be 5 months, 6 months. That depends on the kind of tobacco that goes into the cigar, because in some blends you have thicker tobaccos than others, so those need a little bit more time to rest, no, to get rid of to marry and to get rid of the humidity, and also the thickness. That's another reason why some cigars need to be longer in the aging room. But that's it. After 2 months, some cigars are ready to be packed and to be shipped, and they will be a great cigar. So that's my
Okay,
opinion.
I get it. So short term, it matters, but long term, not so much, right?
Exactly. That's a good way to say it. Exactly. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Karen.
Hi.
Hi
Sorry
there.
that I was jumped in a bit late today, so
Hello,
apologies
Karen.
for missing
Not at
missing
all.
the start.
Welcome.
I wanted to ask you about your blends across vitolas. So there's a couple of your cigars that I've had that I've preferred in one vitola to the other. So I wondered, first of all, what your default rolling vitola is. And then, so do you roll everything you blend in a Robusto and then work on the Toro or the Lancero? Or do you roll everything in the Lancero and then work on the Robusto? And then the second part of the question is, when you change the vitola, obviously the ratios of the leaf change, do you then try and tweak the recipe to keep them all as close as possible? Or do you just accept that they're a different animal, although they've got the same name, that they're a slightly different flavor because the ratios are different?
Excellent questions.
Sorry if
that's
that's a bit garbled. I couldn't get it make sense in my head, but I know what I meant. I
yes,
hope people understood that.
That's something that even me would like to know sometimes, right?
Okay.
Yes. No, of course, yes. What I do, no, I don't know how other people work, but what I do is just basically I work on the robusto size that I'm planning to have on certain line. No, for example, 1880, that's during 1880. We have a big robusto, 55 by 5.25. Why? Because we wanted to give you more, more tobacco on that size of robusto. No, I think sometimes the consumer appreciates that, and also I found that we could play with more tobaccos, different tobaccos in that particular size, that 55 by 5.25, etc. I decided to use that to use that size in our robusto. So yes, I started to play with it. Then I moved to and sorry, actually the original idea was to have only one size, the robusto, and this has to do with one of your questions, because it's really difficult most of the times to match exactly the taste on one size to the other one, right?
Completely.
It's
Yeah.
a challenge. And so I don't know if either because I was already very tired or I didn't want to, to have more troubles and going. No, honestly, the reason was this, because I prefer to have more options in terms of blends than in sizes. No? So I said, okay. And this has to do also with a commercial reason. No, if you are a consumer, you go to a shop and you see one brand, one line, three different sizes, and you pick one, and nobody has taught you, nobody is there to guide you, and you pick one size of that particular brand and you smoke it, and you feel that cigar that you just smoked is not for you for whatever reason, no, too strong or too, okay, I'm almost sure that you will not continue with the other sizes.
That's exactly what happened to me. And I got a surprise when I tried the other size, which is why I was asking. That's exactly what happened. We had a club cigar. I smoked it. I was like, oh, yeah, that was all right. Would I buy it again? Probably not for me, kind of thing. And then I had the same cigar in a different vitola and was like, oh, I'd buy a box of these. And
exactly.
But if I hadn't randomly had that happen, I wouldn't. That's why I was literally exactly why I was asking.
You got a point. So that was you, but not. I think the majority of the people don't think that way or wouldn't do that, no, because they would need to spend more another whatever, no. Now, so I said, okay, I'd rather start with only one size in different blends to avoid that, because okay, if somebody doesn't want that blend, they would think that it would be okay probably to try another blend, because it's easier for them to assume that the taste will be different, right? So that was my idea. But then we became then we had COVID and there was a bigger demand of cigars. So we said, okay, instead of extending the lines, no, we already had the Claro, Claro, Maduro, etc. And actually we did. We had 4, and then we extended to another 3. Now we have 7 in total. We have the doble claro, claro, rosado, oscuro, maduro, doble maduro, right? Before we only had 4. And then we said, okay, we expanded our line this way. Now we're going to expand it vertically. And then we started to make blends in those different sizes, those different vitolas, but it's almost impossible, honestly. That's the question I have for myself many times. And how people do that, how other manufacturers are able to, and to be honest, I believe none of us have been able to achieve the same taste that they have in this brand, in their Robusto, than in the Lancero, for example. It's just similar, right? Because otherwise there wouldn't be a point. But that's what we're trying to do our best to match that taste of certain size, probably the one that you started with this other. And what could happen is what you just told me, no? that probably that other Vitola, it tastes better, let's put it that way, no? For some people than the Robusto. Okay, that's a fantastic, that is something fantastic, no? So yes, but it's hard, it's very, very hard, no? Some sizes is a little bit, for example, I got the Robusto and I got the double Robusto, which is the same ring gauge, but the length changes by 1.25 inch. The taste changes. It starts very, very smooth. Then it gains a little bit more strength, more complexity, etc. But it's not the same. No, just not the same.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry, the other question.
I've got one other tiny question, which is I saw that you're headed to Scotland for the Meet the Makers event.
Yes.
Have you been to Scotland before? Are you looking forward to it?
I'm not sure how many, 5 years ago, actually. Yes, the first time that they did the event over there.
I
Yes,
know.
I'm very excited.
Rosalie's going.
All right, great.
So you'll
Yes,
see
see
that.
you there.
I hope you have a really good time. That was all I wanted to say.
I'm
Looking
looking
forward
forward
to
to that. Yes, me too.
Karen, thank you so
I'll see you
much
there.
for the great questions. Alejandro, what a fascinating deep dive it has been. You've been very, very generous with your time and with your expertise and everything that you shared
Anytime,
with
my
us.
friend.
It's such a privilege to have you on, and thank you particularly for the very fascinating tasting of the pure grade tobaccos. I hope to see you next week in New Orleans at the trade show, but I have a feeling we will.
Definitely, I'm only waiting to get my US visa, so I'm a little bit nervous. I'll see. Of course, if I get it on time, I'll see you there. And Reinhard,
I look forward
really,
to it.
really thank you. It's always a pleasure, honestly, to be with you.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine. It's been an absolute honor to have you on again. Thank you.
And thank you to all your guests.
Absolutely.
And I hope to see you soon.
We will. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. You all be well, be safe, and we'll see you all next week. Same time, same station. Until then, light them up and good night, everybody. Thank you. Cheers.
Take care.
Hey, Reinhard. Are you Zooming next week from PCA?
I'm